outline. It is a great feeling because it becomes clear as if light appeared on the idea that was there hidden in the dark.
And when we associate a little bit with Barry Kaufman's video of the sheep and the tiger, I think everybody seen it. If not, go ahead, homework for tomorrow. But it's the idea when you realize that you own your life and you become a tiger instead of staying as a sheep. And then Florencia talked about different ways and awareness of learning, if I got it right. And Bert didn't share.
And when Carla was talking about the Kaufman video, she mentioned something and I wrote it, and it's an individual roar. It's like a different aha. It's, you know, I thought it was a really nice expression to summarize the feeling.
I think that's an important contribution, adding a feeling to the moment, or to the process.
Yeah.
And there is a connection, a very deep emotional connection. I think that's important.
Yeah?
I have a question on Cassandra's point that feeling of the light appears. It comes from outside, or is it that you bring light to the moment or to the
Divine intervention.
Yeah.
I'm not sure the most.
No, maybe if Cassandra reached the beginning, you were talking about a clear understanding.
Is that moment, that satisfaction, because if you feel like light appears, that was the word we used. Is it from a third party, or is you bring the light to the moment?
You bring your focus, you bring the light. And it for me, it was like, you sort of had it there in the back of your mind, but it was not lightened, you know, it was in the dark. So I feel that you just, it's like putting a lupa, you know, where you go, and it just becomes clear. Just that everything fits in its place. But it's a personal experience. I don't think, when you were saying before that you can enlighten others, I don't think that would be enlightenment. I don't know if we're talking about that, but I think it's a very personal experience.
It sounds a little bit like the conversation we had in the morning. Can you make other people's meaning for them?
Yeah. Yeah. Or the question that you asked there.
The question raised because we were talking kind of as a teacher what you have to do, like you show the evidence. Danny was saying, for instance, you have a paradigm, you show how the paradigm doesn't solve some issues. You can put that evidence in front of the eyes of the student and help them find different meanings. But what happens when they have the evidence in front of the eyes and they just don't want to accept it? There's the entanglement that we were talking. So what do you do with that student who doesn't want to learn that way? Enlighten him, just like giving spark or something.
Yeah. I would say it's the same idea of motivating people. Sometimes we have to motivate our students. As far as I understand, we cannot motivate others. We can incentivate, en español, incentivar a otros, that each person motivates their own. O sea, tú no puedes. Just help them help themselves. Yeah.
You can never help someone who doesn't want to be helped.
Can you make them realize they need help?
They have to realize they need help. You can help them.
Yeah. You
That's
may
the role of a psychologist.
incentivize the process. You may offer like some fun, some interesting thoughts, but they need the drive, in my opinion, to do it. They need the will. You cannot do it for them.
Because it goes back to your example of the student who doesn't have a cell, doesn't have a way.
Doesn't have an attitude.
What can you do that? Can you invite him so, I want to learn? Or what do you do that?
Seminario just jumped, that's the role of the psychologist. Or psychiatrist. I'm sorry. Soldier, if your names were there, I mean,
We're making your life difficult. I know.
But do you think that the role of the psychiatrist is to make? Can the psychiatrist actually make the person?
No, that's not a good psychiatrist.
It's an interesting analogy, at least, I don't know, Daniel's taking psychology, I'm wondering if he has looked into different paradigms of psychoanalysis, because one paradigm is where you create the conditions for self-discovery, but you can't actually force the discovery.
That's the Freudian focus.
Some Freudian purposes.
But Freudians usually ask a lot of questions, basic questions, and you have to answer them. So conductivists are more eager to provide you with the things you have to do. They give you homework. Exactly. So there are different schools actually.
And I think going back to what you said, it's like a difference between teaching and learning. Because when you try to make the student see and everything, you're teaching him, you're telling him, but he's not learning. He's just repeating or doing whatever you're manipulating.
I think that the really key aspect here is to realize that the student isn't a blank slate, that they have, I mean, I don't think that there are individuals that aren't passionate about something. I think everyone has something that they really care about. And I think a lot of times what happens when you put, the anomaly that clashes with the current paradigm that the student has, and the student doesn't care, is probably because they don't have a paradigm that clashes with that anomaly. They might not just have asked those questions. And I think the key thing there is, I mean, when, as you were saying, when you want to motivate someone, you can't create motivation, but you can find something that motivates them and make it relevant to what you want to motivate them about. So I think a lot of times when you want to make a student respond to a particular stimuli or to a particular topic and to inquire about it, I think what you have to do is find out what the student already inquires about and what the student already finds relevant, and then seek out how to make the contents of the class relevant to the students, and in that way engage the flame that's already there and just sort of channel it to where it needs to be for the class. I think you were talking a little bit about that with your with the architecture students, like when they see I don't know what exactly you're doing, but when they see the spreadsheet, it's probably, the first time, it's probably meaningless to them. They don't understand why they're learning those tools, what those tools serve. But once they start a business, that's something that they care about. You know, people like to make money, and once they had that experience that was meaningful to them, then they were motivated to understand the tools that help them do that. And I think that's where it's at.
You mentioned that students are not a blank slate, right?
What's a slate?
Can I say something there? A couple of things. I just had a hammer, and I think it's a very important hammer, at least for me.
Urgent.
Yeah, urgent. If you believe that individuals are a blank slate, which is very Randian, by the way, you have to lecture them. Because what the blank slate assumes is that you can lecture the ideas into the mind of the individual. So you can actually write into the mind of the individual. If you do not believe that the humans are a blank slate, which I don't agree, we're not a blank slate, so I agree with you. I think that we have to understand what moves them. What is it that drives them? And that's very personal. And I think that's an important distinction. I think it's very difficult to be a Socratic Randian. It's sort of a contradiction in terms. So that's my how of it. But that's.
I think the question I was going to ask relates somewhat to your question. And what's the alternative? like linguistically? Have we run across anything in the seminar today? This is a guessing game, actually. It's not a genuine question. I think I know.
Manipulate.
So guess what word we might be able to use rather than blank slate. They're not blank slates. What are they? Florencia knows, even if she doesn't know that she knows.
Can I think?
What was the question?
What's the alternative to describing our students as blank slates? If they're not blank slates, what are they?
Sponge.
And I'm suggesting that we've already come across a good word for it in our seminar today.
Individuals.
Persons.
Debe ser algo de Michael Oster.
Well, we're saying that these persons, these individuals, are not blank slates. So what are they?
Yeah, well, Oshak called them history.
Histories.
That's what he called them. And
You got it right.
I was a guess.
May I disagree a little with that? Dan? Well, not necessarily disagreement, but I think that some of that history, the assumption that you're not a blank slate, what it's actually saying is that some of that history is not from outside. Some of that history is yours. It's within you. It's within your conscious. You're just making it aware. You're aware of it. So I was kind of confused with that because when we talk about history, somehow we are sort of suggesting that the history came from outside. But the idea that we're not blank slates assumes that some of it is actually internal, and I think that's important.
I think what gets Oakshot beyond that interpretation, because I agree, you could be a blank slate and a history.
Yeah.
Here's the blackboard, which
Everybody
is my
has written.
soul that everyone has written on, right?
Yeah.
But he talks about being the one in charge of making it. Right? The individual is responsible and accountable. They're the ones making the meaning. So the meaning isn't written onto you. It is a creative process of the individual. But I hear how just pulling up that word doesn't necessarily get at it.
I wanted to add something, and I know Carlos going to criticize me now, but I want to pull out Deming again, because
No, I'm not criticizing you about that.
Deming has a very important, Deming is all about intrinsic motivation. I have been saying this for 10 years, maybe more. But Deming says managers would not have to be concerned about motivating individuals if they didn't do so many things that demotivate them. And I think that's a very interesting idea. What he's suggesting is that we are trying so hard to motivate individuals by using extrinsic rewards and punishments and all that. And what we are actually doing is we are destroying the individual. We're actually trying to make the individual do what we think is important for him through rewards and punishment. And what he's trying to say is let the individual understand what is it that motivates him, what is it that he wants to learn about, and let him do the learning for him.
Can we apply that to the class instead of managing?
I always try to do that. What I always do is I try to, that's why I'm in favor of providing different means of learning, not only one medium. Because I think that each individual should be allowed to see what is that they want to do and try to find out those different ways to do the learning. That's a very personal thing.
Can you say the first phrase again?
Managers wouldn't have to worry about motivating their workers if they didn't do so many things that demotivate them.
Say it with professor and students.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it applies.
Say it again.
It applies perfectly well to learning in school. Yeah, it applies both ways.
No, pero es que ahora quiero escribir, no es porque te quieran
Los profesores no tendrían que preocuparse, están motivando a sus alumnos si no hicieran tantas cosas que los desmotivan.
Eso es igual que los jefes, sí.
Sí.
En la empresa.
Ahí le va a mandar la...
If you didn't spend so much time explaining the reading, maybe they'd have to read it.
Yeah, I'm going to send the readings, so I'm going to do the
There is also a similarity with the government and business, with regulation and interest. People just want to do this and they have so many things to do that are demotivated.
En las empresas, los mismos desmotivadores que son los jefes jefes son los que después invierten dinero en ver cómo los motivan.
Se la pone de esa manera, usted crea un ambiente desagradable, entonces tiene que estar preocupando de cómo lo motiva, ¿no?
Eso es lo que gusta mejor que
Ahora, ¿tú qué crees tú que hacemos los profesores para
Esa
desmotivar?
pensé yo también.
Imposing, there are various things we're doing.
Carlos, can I just make one? Do you know what motivates your students? Do you know what motivates each of your students?
Money.
Rats.
Do you know what motivates each one of your students?
I think, well, sometimes
Yes
I
or
do,
no?
it depends, yes.
Yes.
Each one of them.
Food, sex, money.
I
Each
have,
one.
I have had classes where, yes, I have had that. Yeah.
They have groups of 8 or 10 sometimes in design, so they really get to know their
Sí.
students.
And I ask them, and they work on what they want, so they,
Okay, so maybe you're in the right track. But the thing is that many times we don't even take the time to learn
Exactly.
what they
Mhm.
motivate for.
Well, part of having a discussion like this in stages is for the students to discover each other's ideas. Because you might have something you want to cover on the curriculum. Maybe it's a piece of complex text you'd like them to encounter. And dialogue is a great way to make articulate some of our tacit awareness or understanding of our prior learning about something. So in the groups of 4, we just encountered this question, what is enlightening? And even before that, we were asked to ask ourselves and just try to define what our prior learning was about that in our individual essays. All of this is about preparing the environment, really. Preparing the environment for dialogue to take place. Often dialogue is not successful or doesn't take place because the students haven't been prepared for it. And the scaffolding that they need to take that step into meaningful dialogue hasn't really been built. So dialogue can be used as preparation for dialogue. They can also practice voicing their ideas in smaller groups where the rule set for them, the tacit rule set, is more knowable. It's more like the one-to-one conversation. You'll notice that the room was alive with conversation when we had the smaller groups. And as soon as everyone came back to the big group, there was silence again. So there's something more challenging about the larger group than the smaller group. But now that we go to do what might be on the list, of the curriculum, we're really prepared. We've cultivated the ground, if you will. We may have our own questions. We may now think that we know less about what enlightenment is than we did before, which is one of those great Socratic moments when you learn that you may not know what you thought you knew.
What does corn porn mean?
It's not porn. Disturbing. Poem, there you go.
oh, I thought it was interesting.
It's interesting that you misread the
But she did
word.
mention
This is
sex,
gonna get
food, and
interesting.
something else. We're not going there.
Funny.
What motivates people? It's not results to sex, money, food.
Exactly. Well, that's a great question. What is corn pone? Is really a wonderful question, and I'm going to leave that hanging. Okay? And maybe by reading this
Because that
carefully,
word porn is not very...
very uncommon, very
Yeah,
uncommon.
very
So,
uncommon.
so that's one of the things that one of the first questions I might ask students to see if they can read this carefully to understand it. Of course, you can go to the net right away and look it up, but the challenge is, can we understand it by reading the text? What I'd like you to look at now is the Kant piece. It says Kant, freedom to reason. And ignore the first paragraph there, you can read that later. It's just an editor's note about Kant's essay. And I'd like us to read the first 3 paragraphs. Just the first 3 paragraphs. Let's read it on our own first. So you'll be reading to just the second page at the top.
I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention. We ignore the first bit.
Yeah, well, you can read it, but we're going to be talking about where he says, enlightening is man's quitting the knowledge.
Mhm.
And we're gonna end on the second page where it says,
Multitude.
thoughtless multitude.
¿Qué era entonces?
Ese es el comunismo.
¿Ah?
Era otra cosa totalmente. No tiene nada que ver con lo que estamos hablando, pero vamos, estamos hablando. We were talking-
Enlightenment was a
we're
completely
talking
different
baloney
thing.
about
We were just
enlightenment.
talking beer.
Los Kansas.
According to Kant.
According to Kant, we're talking
Maybe
baloney.
Kant is wrong.
It could be. I was saying that we were talking baloney.
Oh, yeah, that's the right
About-
word. That was that.
Well, I wouldn't be so quick to
Yeah.
come to that conclusion. This is a formal definition of Socratic practice by Michael Strong. It says, Socratic practice is close textual analysis of conceptually difficult texts in which students are responsible for understanding and group process. Most students don't even know that there is a group process to be cultivated or achieved, let alone what that looks like. But by encountering together difficult problems to solve, or in this case, difficult texts to analyze, they can reflect on what that process is. Establish some of the rules that they think will help in that process, and revise those rules over time. We've had a number of experiences so far today without any rules being given. Just encountering the rules we brought in with us, the culture that we brought in with us when we entered the room. And most of any changes in the rules has been going on at an inarticulate level. We may have adjusted our own conduct or own behavior in little ways because we are learning what the implicit rule set is. And that's very much how cultures